Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be doing a review on These Things Linger by Dan Franklin. And this is a Cemetery Dance Publications release. I love Cemetery Dance. It is run by Richard Chizmar, who wrote Chasing the Boogeyman. He's a frequent collaborator with Stephen King. So I tend to be really excited when their books come out, and even more excited when Twisted Retreat does collaborations with them. Most recently, they worked on Sallow Bend together by Alan Baxter, and the May book I just saw is going to be the new Alan Baxter book through Cemetery Dance as well. So very excited every time I get one of these. I had never heard of Dan Franklin before, but I liked the premise of this novel. I really liked the original cover, which we do not have. It's which we don't have here because this is like the redesigned limited edition for Twisted Retreat. I was a little underwhelmed with the kind of razor blade moment here, but when you read the book, the cover really does make sense. Let's take a moment to like look at this book, because it really is quite something. I love the stenciled edging. It's kind of just black on the top and bottom, but you do get this gas station here, which is the Texaco from the story that our main character worked at in high school. The interior kind of has these razor blades and this ghost, which I really like as well. It's the same on both sides, and then when we take the slip cover off, you get an alternative cover, which is still not the original cover of the book. So they did give us 3 different cover designs for this limited edition, and the third cover being this, which is a little bit more similar to the original cover design, except the original cover design, the heat from the flame is actually a silhouette of a person, which I thought was really haunting and beautiful. But regardless, I do really enjoy the beauty in this book. It is kind of the same on the front and back, and we do have the name of the book on the cover as well as on the spine, which I'm always a fan of. So I'm going to read the inside flap for you guys really quickly before I dive into this review. So it says, when Alex Wilson's estranged uncle unexpectedly dies, Alex realizes he would do just about anything to make peace with the man who had raised him as his own. He'd even reach out to the dead. But things more dangerous than ghosts haunt his uncle's broken-down trailer and the nearly abandoned one gas station town of Fairhill just beyond. Things that can devour the living and the dead alike, and are all too ready to answer his call. Some parts of our past never really leave us. There are things that don't know how to die. These things linger. Dan Franklin's supernatural thriller novel, These Things Linger, is a twisting and unforgiving tale of desperation, depression, heritage, and of other hungry, vicious things. So I absolutely loved the setup of this book. I loved the concept. I loved the setting of this small town of Fairhill, Maryland. I am from Maryland. I grew up like right outside of DC. So reading about Maryland and that area is so cool for me. I love when authors do it. Ronald Malfi does it quite a lot. Obviously Richard Chizmar does it. Cemetery Dance is based in Maryland. So it's one of those things where when I read a story based in where I grew up, I can really see the town and the landscape and the types of people that these authors are talking about. And I thought it did a great job capturing Maryland, especially small town like rural Maryland. And I really loved the premise. I really thought this story was going to be about a man facing his demons through the ghost of his uncle and kind of trying to set things right that he didn't have the chance to do in life. That's kind of how the book set itself up for me. And the first half of the book really seemed to lean into that premise before it took a completely different turn and went in a completely different direction than I thought it was going to. And one of my biggest issues with that is I really thought this story was going to focus on this small one gas station town, because the whole build up to the main point of the story seemed to focus around that. And it didn't. Instead, it took place in other various locations far outside of the town. And I thought that was a little disappointing, because I felt like a connection had been made to this town, and a connection had been made to our main character's uncle, that after the premise is established, kind of just completely fades away. And I feel like there was a novel in there that I would have wanted to read, and the novel that I get wasn't quite what I made it out to be. That being said, this is a beautifully haunting book. This is a really unique way to do a ghost story that's also in a way cosmic horror, but because it's been veiled as a ghost story, you don't really recognize it as cosmic horror until you get kind of towards the end, and there's kind of this reveal that's it's not unexpected, it's just kind of there, that really connects it back to a kind of Lovecraftian story. I don't like cosmic horror, but this is a type of cosmic horror that I can get behind because it didn't really come out of nowhere. It was definitely built up to it. There were a lot of allusions to what was going on, and it did actually become scary. In doing so, I think it did elevate the story. And I will say this like cosmic entity in its true form, I thought was very traditional Lovecraftian in imagery. And I got it. I saw it. It felt creepy. It felt correct. Again, it was really alluded to throughout the book what this monster would look like. I thought that was great. However, it does come in different forms, and the form that it takes on the most in its initial haunting, I couldn't get past the fact that the description made it sound like the lesser titans in Attack on Titan, and I just could not get over that because it just seemed so comical to me when it was trying to be extremely terrifying. I also had issues with our characters. For the most part, I really liked Maddie and Buzz. I really, really did. I really wanted more from them. And again, in my mind, this novel was going to primarily take place in this small town. It really starts off so ingrained in this small town and with these town locals that I really wanted more from them. I wanted more from Lacey and her past. I wanted more from Buzz and Maddie. And I felt like they were kind of swept under the rug in order to elevate the story forward with Alex and his wife Rachel, which is okay. And I didn't dislike this book at all. This book is a 4-star read for me. I really, 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 really enjoyed Dan Franklin's writing style. I thought his prose was awesome. It was super easy and compelling to read. I read like 200 pages in one sitting. So I did really, really enjoy this book, but I have to be nitpicky because I just kept thinking that there was a better novel in here that could have been pulled forward. And I think had they just set it mainly in the town of Fairhill throughout the entire novel and not just for the first half, I would have gotten a lot more out of it. I really wanted more background on these characters, more on their upbringing, more on how they became who they were. And I felt like a lot of it was just kind of nods in passing by to kind of push the story with Alex and Rachel forward. Again, I didn't mind Alex as a main character. He, to me, suffers from what I like to call main character syndrome, where he is just kind of this like morally decent guy whose flaws are very, very minimal and therefore kind of a boring character, but uses a catalyst to kind of carry everything forward. However, his wife was insufferable. And I feel like part of her characterization was written because she was in like kind of hormonal shifts of her kind of difficult pregnancy, but that didn't make up for the fact that she was so mean and condescending to pretty much anyone she interacted with. There's an entire scene where her and Alex go to see a psychic, and she is just so aggressively rude and disrespectful, and it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Like it made her a very unlikable, kind of snarky person, and a lot of the plot is kind of based on subconsciously Alex having to choose between his uncle and his wife, and Dan Franklin, I didn't think, did a good enough job explaining why he would choose his wife over his uncle. And again, this is just kind of a minor, like, under the surface level plot point that's not really like derivative to the plot for its face value, if that makes sense. But it was something that I was like, wow, Dan Franklin's really losing this argument. Like, she is just awful. There's a scene too where she's interacting with Alex and Lacey, and she is so cruel to Lacey, and that one is, in my mind, a little bit more understandable. Like the circumstances of what got them there kind of, it allows her to be kind of in that negative realm, but I don't know, she just constantly rubs me the wrong way. And then there's a scene too where she's in a hospital getting like her sonogram checked, and she's so rude to Alex again, and it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it again could be written off as like this woman in crisis kind of having all of these large realizations that are affecting her life forever, but to me, pairing that with all of her other characterizations just made me despise her as a character. I thought she was so unlikable and so mean and so self-centered and so cruel. And so I had a really hard time with her as a character because of that. And I don't think Alex deserved that, and I don't think Lacey deserved to be dealing with her. And Lacey was such a tragic character too that I really wish had been explored more. And this is kind of how I know that I did really enjoy this book, because one of my largest complaints with this novel is that I wanted more. I kind of understand where the ending came from, and this is not really a happy ending type of story, but I really do wish that it had been at least like 3 or 4 pages longer. I felt like the ending just kind of faded to black, but I needed a little bit more to feel satisfied with the conclusion and have kind of an understanding of the conclusion. I feel like it's a little bit open to interpretation, but it's not open enough to have been left kind of where it is. It either needed a more solid conclusion giving us the answers, or it needed to be a little bit more descriptive in explaining the openness of the conclusion. Another thing to note is a couple trigger warnings in this novel. Something does happen to a cat, so you need to be aware of that. It is very quick. And it didn't bother me too much, maybe because I felt like the writing around it was kind of poorly done, so it almost read to me like absurd. And then there is a really tragic event with a mother and child. That one was really, really heavy, and a lot of the beginning of the book is really, really heavy. There's definitely this kind of tonal shift where the book starts off really, really well crafted, really deep, really heavy, and then kind of goes on this like absurdist, whimsical, haunting journey that kind of lost its touch with the kind of nostalgia of growing up and losing your loved ones, and this like really amazing coming of age story that was laid out for us. I also don't know what time period this book is set in. I thought it was a little interesting because at the beginning we meet our main character, and there's all these references to like Slipknot and like Hannah Montana being popular, which is weird because those were definitely not really popular at the same time. And then I thought it was gonna like flash forward to like present day, and our main character is gonna be significantly older, but it flashes forward only like 5 years, I guess. So we're either like, we have to be in like, I don't know, like 2011 maybe. But like cell phones didn't really seem to be a thing. It was very confusing. It was kind of this like timeless world, kind of like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, where like we're not really sure what time period it is, but it does exist. And one of the other things that really, really bothered me with the story was I felt like the ages of all of our characters were wrong. Our main characters, I think Lacey's 22, Rachel's like 23, and Alex is like 24. All of them needed to be in their late 20s, in my opinion, or early 30s for the extent of this story to take place. Like, Rachel is a medical professional who has a lot of respect and, like, enough of a career that she was able to buy a house. So I'm like, that doesn't really happen right after you graduate. Same thing kind of with Alex, where he just felt like he was an engineer. He was able to support his family as well. You know, they live in a 2-car family home. Like, didn't quite make sense that he had just graduated college. Lacey as well, she married, it sounds kind of like Lacey married into money, but again, she was 22. She has like a daughter that's old enough, I would assume like sometimes between like 3 and 6 maybe. You know, and I just didn't believe that she was 22. Like, it just felt like, and the way that they act and their maturity levels just didn't feel like people who had just graduated college in their early 20s to me. It felt like people who were far, far removed, and also should be far more removed from the hometown that the story is set around. I felt like the story would have worked much, 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 much better had they all been late 20s, early 30s. It just would have felt more tangible and more real. I am nitpicking this book to filth, but it was a really, really good read in my opinion. It just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. But Dan Franklin's writing was so compelling that I didn't really want to put the book down. I devoured the book, and it's a 4-star read for me because there's a lot of moments where, again, I wanted more, or I could see a glimmer of where I thought the novel should go that I really wanted it to pursue. and have like, again, high hopes for Dan Franklin in the future. I will definitely be picking his stuff up again. And I don't think this is his debut release, but I do think it might be his, like, one of his first kind of full-length novels. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked the writing style. I liked the tone. It was so easy to read. It flowed so well. I loved, like, the pacing of the chapters. I loved some of the scarier scenes, like the opening scene, or one of the opening scenes with Lacey and Alex when they're teenagers. I thought was so scary and so well done. And like the footprints and blood scene, I thought that was so chilling. And there's just so many moments like that throughout this story where it is just beautiful and chilling and depraved and depressing and just so scary. And I enjoyed it so much for that, because it does have these really scary moments. And it kind of almost reminded me of my first time reading Adam Neville, where I wasn't necessarily in love with the book overall, but there were so many moments and glimmers of like just amazing writing and beautiful imagery and scary scenes that I was like, this is an author to keep my eye on. So definitely we'll be reading more from Dan Franklin. Definitely very thrilled with this book. The first half of this book was on pace to be a 5-star read, and then it kind of fell off towards the end. But the first half of this book was just fantastic and so scary, and I loved it for that. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.